Yo, what up, y'all? Welcome to another episode of Source and Company. I'm your host, Source, of course. As always, you can holler at me on Instagram or Twitter at Smitty Source on both of those. And you can follow the Source and Company YouTube channel. All right, so this is episode 20. Episode 20 of Source and Company. It's always somehow connected to Richmond, whether it's the company where they live or where they were born, something connected to Richmond. As you probably know, Richmond is kind of on fire right now, between monuments coming down, protests, riots, whatever you want to call it. And some people say police brutality, the mayor, it's a lot going on. So I was able to get together two guys that I know, and I trust that we're gonna have a good conversation. My man has been in law enforcement for 10 years. We're gonna call him K. And we also have my guy from the 381 movement. We will refer to him as T. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Y'all good?
Good.
All good.
Appreciate you. K, I'm gonna start with you real quick because it is the question that I'm sure you are asked all the time, especially being a Black man. How or why did you become law enforcement?
Hey man, it's a long story, a short story, in between story. You know, one could say it's easy. What's the saying? It's easy to join them, to beat them. You know, whatever the saying is.
I got you.
But at the end of the day, yes, I'm a Black man. At the end of the day, I've had my run-ins with law enforcement, and it wasn't always a good one. For that to be said. Initially, growing up as a Black man, you hear how we're supposed to protect ourselves, how we have to go the extra mile, and education is important. Man, all those things are true. Life is different. Being Black, hands down. So yeah, I did a paper in school. I had over the Norfolk State. It was a Black African American class. Asked, what was the question? It was referring to what occupations could help nurture or strengthen the Black male, other than being a rapper or being a athlete.
Right.
And I chose a minister, a principal, and a police. I did my research, did the paper, and I just thought those three were powerful and could influence the Black youth. And during this time, I had been a truck driver, I've been in sales, I had my own little security company, and everything kind of lined up. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna give back. And my initial, I guess, strength would be, the kids. So I didn't want to do drugs and guns, and I knew that I would be arresting people that look like me. I knew I would, So instead, I chose to be a school resource officer. So, but it had to become patrol first before I got to that point.
Got you. We definitely need to touch on the school thing because that's important, and the resource officer issue where they're trying to take the consideration, the ask is that resource officers are moved out of school. We got to at least touch on that a little bit. T, my guy,
Yeah.
real simple, 381 movement. What is it? Explain it to me.
All right. Well, 381 movement is it's an activist movement. Of course, we want to fight for justice for anyone that's been wronged by the system. It stands for, or it's modeled after Martin Luther King's Montgomery bus boycott, because they actually protested and demanded change for 381 days. So that's where we actually got it from, and that's where we feel like the torch was passed to us, because obviously, 60 some odd years later, we're still dealing with some injustices. So that's the gist of 381 and why we named it that.
Got you. Hey, that's serious business though, because that's an on taking, man. But once you're in it, you're in it. I don't think you can run from it, especially when
Very
your
true.
face is kind of attached to it.
That's true. Very true. We understand historically what that means, and it's to us personally, there shouldn't be any risk with it, but there are going to be people who don't like what we're doing, and as there always has been in history. But somebody got to do it, so we feel like we're the group to do it.
Respect, respect. So, in that thought, how did it even become a thing? Like, how did you already have those same like-minded people? Is it even like-minded people, or is it just one common goal?
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit of both. It started with we kind of started at one of the bigger protest marches. I believe it was the day that the mayor and the police chief actually had marched from City Hall down to the Lee Monument.
Mhm.
At that day, actually, I was the only one to have a megaphone for some reason, and everybody was using my megaphone, and I ended up connecting with another gentleman, and we ended up discussing things, and he kind of already had the idea. He had already 381 was already kind of his idea, and so me and him talked and realized that we were like-minded. And it was a young black woman and another individual, and we kind of met at a church the next day just to make sure that we vetted each other and see that we all had the same common goals. And from there, 381 was formed.
Nice. That's nice. All right, Kay. So you mentioned the being a resource officer. I'm just gonna get to my real question here.
Right, right,
So my guy comfortably says the phrase F12, correct?
right.
Okay. Before I get to the details of that on your end, you told me the other day when we were talking, you were like, it's one thing when it comes from one place, it's another thing when it comes from another place. If you don't mind re-explaining that for me.
What? So initially, NWA, different groups. I mean, we grow up, we know what it's about, and to hear it is, it was nothing for me to hear it. You know what I'm saying? It didn't affect me either way because, being in a uniform, you hear Uncle Tom, you hear, F12, all those different things. Being in the schools, it didn't bother me. But now, when I hear it now, it hurts. And that's because, when I put on my uniform, I do this for us. And I hold myself to a higher level, but I also recognize that that uniform don't make me. I make that uniform. You know what I'm saying? So when I know how I advocate and stop people from getting arrested because they didn't have knowledge, and it was one of those situations where, let's be honest, a lot of times, man, we make arrests. It's based on us. It's not, what I'm saying? We have the ability to, what I'm saying, redirect that thing or mentor that thing,
Right.
or, what I'm saying? And a lot of times it's all about, what your big mom taught you, about your attitude. Like, what I'm saying? You get it all the time growing up. You get what you give. So if it's one of those situations where you run a light and I'm right there, dog, and I got all these citizens looking at me, I got a job to do. I'm going to stop, right? I stop you. I come to you. I'm going to give you, respect, sir, man, whatever. I'm going to let you know what the infraction was. We'll keep it pushing, If I can help you, I can help you. If it wasn't an accident, it's all good. But when it gets to a point where you suspended, your plate's not registered, you got a felon, your lights out, what can I do? And then it's, oh man, F12. I understand, sir. I understand. At that point, it's like the respect is gone just because I'm in a uniform, and I'm like, yo, it's all about accountability. Now at this phase, when I'm, I'm saying officers that don't look like me, but they're wearing the uniform and represent what I represent, and my people are perishing, it hurts. And then to know that I'm here to make a difference, but people don't see me as that guy that's trying to make a difference. They see me as the pig or the 12 or the Uncle Tom. It hurt. It hurt now.
How do you, did you have a thought on what he just said? And I want to ask you about the statement and saying it and how, like what it means. Obviously, it is what it is, but what does it actually mean? It's more to it than just all of y'all.
Yeah, it is. It's bigger. We understand, and I think I could speak for most of us who organize, protest, or lead any of these groups that the police are out there, because of course we all communicate. We understand that there are ideals and beliefs that a person holds within themselves. We understand sometimes that they want to make a change. They want to be the change they want to see in the world. We know that there are good people who become officers. But see, when we say F12, it's not necessarily at the individual officer a lot of times. It's about the entire system. It's about the fact that you may be a good cop, but how many times do we see or hear about good cops calling out bad cops when they seen them maybe playing some drugs, or they could have policed the situation, but they just completely enforced the law, where it's an up and down, where they're not using their logic in the situation or going by policy. They're allowing their emotions to control the situation. Or if their higher ups tell them to go do something to somebody innocent or peaceful, they're going to follow orders. They're going to do it. So it's really the top and the entire establishment and the structure of it that the F12 is going for. It's going for the BS, not necessarily just the innocent offers. I definitely respect and understand accountability. I think all of us do as well too. But it's just the fact that somebody can, like, even something as much as an attitude could be the difference in you going to jail or not. If I'm going to jail, I'm going to jail. My attitude should, because I said F you, shouldn't mean that now I get pulled out of the car and the car searched, that kind of thing. So that's the problem. And I think that's the reason why a lot of people say F12. And it's because they're coming at the whole system. And because a lot of people out there, they got dads as cops. They got brothers as cops. They got uncles as cops. It'd be hundreds of us, sometimes thousands. And a lot of them have direct family members or immediate family members that are a part of law enforcement. And they don't hate their family. They just hate the system as a whole and what it stands for and the racial disparity within it.
Do you think that, did you have a comment? Did you have a rebuttal, Kate, based on what he said?
No, I mean, everything he's saying is, I mean, like I said, it is what it is as far as F12. But as far as, sometimes making a judgment call, or when it's, at the officer's discretion, even as a citizen, even myself, you have to take into account that people are human and it's not a robot doing the job. And sometimes you can be an opportunist. You can be that person that, I was going 30 miles over the speed limit, but a yes sir or no sir got it reduced, and now it's not reckless, versus, sometimes it can work to your advantage, sometimes it can work against you. But at no point should you lose your life. You know what I'm saying? Bottom line, unless you introduce that element. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's all I'm saying. We human, so regardless, you gonna respect me or not. Now you gotta deal with the fact if I'm an ass or if I'm not. That's gonna be on you. But if your mom and daddy raised you like you're supposed to, you will reflect on that and play the game and navigate your way through it like we as people do. That's what we do. We survive. You know what I'm saying? We learn the nuances, how to make it work for us. And ain't nobody ever teach me I'm gonna navigate through this joint by disrespecting a man in a uniform.
That's fair. I think that's a fair statement. So as far as, and I'm gonna jump topics because I know we're kind of short on time. To you, T, defunding the police. I know that people generally don't understand, or at least at the beginning, they didn't understand the concept of defund the police. Because everybody thinks you're trying to dissolve. Well, I mean, there is a movement to dissolve the police as well, but specifically defund the police. Thoughts?
Yes. Okay. Yes, and we get that a lot too with the difference between the abolition and the defunding, and people thinking it's going to be rampant. First off, that people do forget that we are a heavily policed nation. We have a lot of law enforcement in the country. We have a lot of it. We have just even locally, we got Capitol Police, we got the city police, we got the county police, we got the state troopers, we got the U.S. Marshals, we got the DEA, we got the ATF, we got the sheriff's office. You got just police on top of police. The biggest thing that we want, especially for the county and local police and the city police, is when we say defunding, we basically want reallocation of taxes. Of course, it came out that the police budget was somewhere around 100 million. And it's like, well, when I go to George Wolf and I see leaky ceilings, you know, when I'm going to pick up, you know, a young brother I know's leaky ceilings, a school beat down, beat up, barely can host football games. You know, there's barely any tech schools or trade centers. It's all in the news that we don't have bus drivers to drive the kids to school. Teachers overworked and underpaid. But then we see the police in full riot gear, new cars, AKs, AR-15s, tear gas, and pepper spray, all of this stuff, spending all this money. We feel like that money can be taken out and put back into the community. And if you do that, then you get more productive members of society and less crime and less reasons for the police officers to be so heavily funded and to have so many of them. Because really, honestly, it's not the amount of police and the money that we're putting into it isn't stopping people from shooting up basketball games. It's not stopping these kids from doing anything. The crime is still there. So we're spending the money really for no reason. You know, you don't even necessarily, there's a lot of people, even within the movement, who some want abolishment of the entire police department. Some just want them to be defunded so we can put that money back into the community. So I think that either way, with me personally, either way would be good with me. Definitely putting the money back into the community. We need tech schools and we need trade schools in the city of Richmond. Like, you shouldn't have to your family shouldn't have to try to lie about an address or use your auntie's address so you can go to LC Bird and go to tech school, things like that. There should be 2 or 3 tech schools in Richmond. You know, so these kids can have something to look forward to, be mechanics, learn a trade, be a welder, something to keep them off the streets. Because we already know the dynamic of parents and we know how impoverished communities are. We need, you know, there's a bunch of things that we could talk about. Community centers, teaching financial literacy to some of the mothers and parents that are in the projects in the hood, you know, in Section 8. All these things would create better citizens, you know, change the minds of the youth, rather than really all we're doing now is just creating a pipeline for free prison labor. And that's all they're doing. Same white supremacy, own all these prisons. Virginia got over 110 jails or prisons, combining them all. That's insane. And they're just getting all this free labor, just slave labor out of people, just locking them up. So that's why people want the police defunded. They don't necessarily want all the police to go away. Not everyone, but they want reform of it, of the policies in the police department, the civilian review board, so civilians can actually take part in reviewing cases where there's misconduct. We don't want the police to police themselves. If they're here to serve and protect the community, we want to be a part of holding them accountable as well. Like with the former chief, we don't want them to be able to say, well, we did an internal investigation and they're on suspended leave. No, we want to be at the table for the investigation. And we as the people decide if they need to be subpoenaed or whatnot based upon excessive use of force and things of that nature.
That's real. That's real. Okay, you mentioned earlier about the resource officer thing. I want to go back to that because I guess I could say it, you know, you said it to me. I think it was not off the table. You said if they take resource officers out of school, it's not going to go well.
I don't think so at all. And that's a part of the funding, or listen, at the end of the day, I don't do politics. I don't know the budget, what's allotted to the police, but I do know we don't have enough vehicles, we don't have enough officers. My roll call is short. It's supposed to be 9, 10, it's 3, 4. Like I said, we don't have, I don't know where the money going to. We don't have equipment that we need. But hey, if they want to take it from us, I mean, we will work with what we got. I mean, that's how we do. But as far as in the school, man, there's been times where, like I said, they start off with F12, and by the time I get to do what I do, they calling me Unc, you know, and I establish rapport with these kids quickly. You know, I have my own children, you know, I have that spirit about me, and I'm able to relate to these kids and mentor them and talk to them at a level where they know I'm real. And a lot of times, man, we're able to stop a potential crime, murder, before it even gets started. Or we're able to solve crimes because we're in the trenches and we know who these kids are and what their nicknames are and what they do and who they hang with. Just the ones we just couldn't reach. And then when they see people like me, and not just me, I mean the other officers, we got officers of, you know, black and brown and white. But at the end of the day, they're able to see us as men and not what they think of initially, you know, what the police is supposed to stand.